Do we have the word? Yeah. No.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Give me just a second here. I'm still getting the workbook. Okay, so this is really kind of a study group class. We don't really have an agenda like we would when we do some of the other classes. So this is a little bit more of a free form. There's going to be a lot more Q&A and a bit more lecture. And the way that I was thinking we'd do this, because it's a little bit different than some of the other classes, is we'll target a system or a set of conditions. I'll talk about them for a little bit. And then we'll do Q&A specific to that grouping, right? And so we're going to cover a lot of different things. And so we should be able to cover anything that you have like questions about. Yeah, and we're going to bounce around in the book. We're not going to go like in order. So one of the things I'd like to start off with right off the bat is something that we kind of talk about, but we don't talk about like tons, is digestive function, which is letter B, and is at the top of page 4.
And I'm getting you that right now, guys. So I'm putting in the chat right now that link to the workbook. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. I'm still going to work on getting it emailed to you guys as well. But this way you can click that link in the chat and you'll be able to look at the workbook with us. It's a big workbook, so Betty had a lot of work to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I was working on it up until the very end. And I'm still only probably about half of my notes. A third of my notes are in this booklet.
I told Greg he wrote a book and I need to just publish this. And he's like, it's not done. I'm like, none of your books are done. So yeah, most of you guys probably were able to get into chat, so you could probably go ahead.
Okay, so we're at the top of page 4, and let's talk about digestive function just right off the bat. You know, we're gonna bounce around. We're gonna be talking about endocrine function. We're gonna be talking about pain, things with the nervous system, muscular system, even kind of basic psychotherapy stuff. You know, the thing with the basic psychotherapy stuff is we're starting a series. We already kind of started it that is geared towards psychological healing. One was the I am presence. And then next weekend is inner healing, where we go through and we are releasing things that are psychological issues that we have, but we're releasing it through activating the intuitive mind and then releasing them in our sleep. And then we have the 4 directions, which is about transforming or transmuting the emotional body. And then at the beginning of August, we have streams of consciousness that is about transmuting and transforming the mental body. And so, you know, one of the things that's the issue with psychological things is it's a lot more complicated than just, you know, symptom and treatment. You know, you really have to go through and unwind a lot of different things. And so I decided to do it in a series. So I know several people have emailed us about the inner healing class, and it is something that stands on its own, but it's part of a series that we're going through to do psychological healing. And, you know, we're really going to be pushing psychological healing over the next 3 or 4 months. And yeah, we'll be talking more about it later. Okay, so top of page 4, digestive functions. So the digestive system, you know, it is something that affects a lot of different aspects. For one, it's heavily impacted by stress. When stress or inflammation in the body is present, one of the very first things it hits is digestive function. And so, you know, especially as we get older, digestive function can go down, and it's, you know, basically not just taking food in and eating food, but it's the assimilation of nutrients, but it also has to do with drives for homeostasis, and it also actually has to do with brain health. And so if there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, or if the gut's malfunctioning, potentially it actually can impact brain function or cognitive function. You know, even things with like serotonin levels and things like that. And so, you know, maintaining good digestive health is important for a lot of reasons, not just to be comfortable after you eat, but you know, if the gut is healthy, usually a good portion of the body is healthy, including our moods and things like this. And so it can have a bit of a psychological impact as well as physiological impact. And so what I thought we'd do is we'd go through and we'd talk about some of the conditions. And then you guys can ask questions about, you know, specific situations or things that, you know, we might not even have listed here, or variations of that. And so, yeah, we'll see how it goes. So amoebas, you know, basically just like little critters in the gut. You know, this can be from exposure to like bad water, things like this. Clove is really good for this. Clove is really amazing for things in the gut. It's very antibacterial, it's very antiviral. It's a very good cleanser, and it also reduces some pain. And the thing with things with the gut is we don't feel pain there like we do in other parts of our body. You know, if you were to go in and make an incision on the liver or on the large intestine, you know, take a knife or a scalpel and make an incision, you actually would not feel a thing. But if there is twisting or misalignments in the body or pressure, that actually can cause pain. Cramping can cause pain, and inflammation actually can cause pain. So if there's some sort of inflammatory response in the body, in the gut, you would feel pain. So we feel pain very differently there, but sometimes there can be problems and you're completely unaware of them because of how the sensory nerves work in that area, right? So loss of appetite, yeah, loss of appetite. Probably your best bet for loss of appetite is ginger. Ginger is ginger, caraway, coriander. All of those are pretty good for loss of appetite. Fennel can be somewhat helpful. I mean, everything listed is good. If it makes the list, it's because it has an impact. But out of this one, the shining star is ginger. Friendly bacteria. So this is an area where sometimes because of antibiotics, sometimes because of just poor nerve innervation, sometimes it's because of allergies. You know, you could find lots of different indicators, but basically the use of Pomarosa taken internally over a period of time helps to cultivate friendly bacteria in the gut. And over a period of time, what patients have reported is it even will start to change the body odor, like you know, like the odor under like the armpits, or like if you know you just have a smell from anywhere off the tissue, but especially in the armpit area, it starts to change that. And so when somebody has like a really strong odor under the armpit or something of that nature, a lot of time it has to do with the gut more than it has to do with, like, say, the armpit, right? And so You can always treat the armpit and you can always treat sweating and everything, but one of the things to go through and do is to treat the friendly bacteria. And one of the indicators for friendly bacteria is, how do you feel like after you eat food? Are you starting to feel a little weird, a little nauseous, a little bloated? You get real super tired afterwards. So sometimes this is the bacteria and sometimes this is the enzymes. And so we'll be talking about the pancreas when we do endocrine function, but that would also play a role in this. If you're not sure, sometimes what I'd like to do is, treatment sometimes can also be an evaluation of itself. And, yes, we're looking at symptoms, but we're also looking at function. And so if you're not sure sometimes, try taking a couple of drops of Pomarosa in water and drinking it. And you want to do it consistently, like daily, for like at least a good 30 days. And then see if that changes how you feel. And if that does change how you feel, most likely you had a bacteria issue in the gut. And so, we try to find the indicators that will guide us to what is best. But part of medical aromatherapy is also a little bit of experiment and a little bit of trial and error. And so with some of this, we want to go through and see what's going on through treatment. And bottom line is, if you improve the quality of the gut, even if there was no issue, nothing's harmed, you're just improving function. But anytime you improve assimilation and digestion, the breaking down of food, and then elimination is good. And one of the easy ways to do it is through friendly bacteria. Okay, bleeding. Bleeding. So this can happen a lot of times with inflammation in the gut, colitis, something of that nature. Diverticulitis is a really big one. And sometimes it's not necessarily bleeding, how like when you get a cut, you're bleeding, but it can be inflammation that begins to like ooze. And, sometimes the walls of the tissue become so inflamed that they get irritated really quite easily and they begin to bleed a little bit. And so one, you want to reduce inflammation, and two, you want to reduce the tendency to bleed or ooze. And so yarrow is, man, nothing works better than yarrow. If you didn't have yarrow, German chamomile would work, but yarrow is so much better at this that yarrow is kind of the go-to thing. Candida. Candida is something that is something that it's a fungus that's exists in all of our bodies, but basically when Candida happens, there's a bit of an overgrowth. And so savory works really well for this. Tea tree works for this. Things that are kind of hot, like thyme, oregano, things like this would also be helpful, but kind of the go-to ones are tea tree and savory. Colitis, again, yarrow. Constipation. Constipation, there's lots of reasons for constipation. One, by going through and starting to relax the nervous system and some of the smooth muscle of the gut, you'll start to have a bowel movement, but sometimes it's a circulatory issue. And also terebinth works really good for constipation. Most of these, you could maybe inhale them and have it work. I know lemongrass sometimes will work just with inhalation, but a lot of times you're going to have to put a couple drops in water and drink it. And so heartburn, dyspepsia. Ginger is probably the big standout here. Tarragon would probably work. Clove, caraway. Here's the issue with peppermint. Peppermint does work with this, but don't take peppermint right before bed. The thing with peppermint is, it's very good for a lot of things. Nausea, vomiting can be helpful for heartburn. It helps to stimulate liver function. Like if you're wanting your liver to detox or you're just trying to jumpstart the liver, peppermint really works. And there's another kind of mint called forest mint. And forest mint is, it's basically this kind of mint that grows obviously in the forest, but it doesn't have the menthol content that peppermint does. So you wouldn't use it for a pain reliever, but the thing with peppermint and forest mint is it's like a body stimulant. Like it just stimulates all the body's processes. Like herbally, cayenne pepper does the same thing. It stimulates all the body's processes. And sometimes when the body is not functioning well, it's like some of the systems might be shut down or a little bit sluggish. And so by going through and doing this, peppermint can actually be very, very helpful, can stimulate the digestive processes. Now, the downside to using peppermint is sometimes it will relax the sphincter that's associated with the stomach. And when you lay down, it relaxes it so that stomach acid starts to go up the esophagus. And so if you do it during the day, it's not an issue, but if you do it and then you go right to bed, you'll probably wake up with a bit of heartburn or a little bit of burning in the esophagus or, up in the throat. And so, yeah. Fermentations, flatulence, basically gas. And so again, ginger works really well for this. Cardamom, coriander works really well for this. My kind of go-to one for this is usually ginger, by the way. Nutmeg also can be very good. Nutmeg's really interesting. It can relax the smooth muscle of the gut, and it helps to dilate vessels. So if something is not getting proper blood circulation, nutmeg helps to increase blood flow to that particular area. And so that could even be something topically. Sometimes it's used in pain formulas because of that. Like it basically opens up blood supply and allows blood to go into an area. And so flatulence or gas, I usually start with probably ginger. Ginger is really amazing for the gut. And so it does a lot of different things. Just its anti-inflammatory impact, the bloating, it does help with enzymes. It does do a lot of different things. And so any of them work. If it made the list, they work, but ginger would be my go-to thing. Gallbladder congestion, again, I would even put gallstones in this. Kind of the go-to thing is peppermint. Some of these other things help with like function and reducing inflammation in the gallbladder. But the go-to thing is usually peppermint. Peppermint anything with menthol will break down the gallstones, for any sort of formation that's happening in the gallbladder. And so there's been many times where people were needing to have their gallbladder removed because of gallstones, and we put them on a regimen of peppermint, sometimes peppermint and rosemary, but usually just peppermint. And again, needs to be taken internally. And in a short amount of time, surgery was no longer necessary, because the menthol breaks down the stones themselves. Lemon is another one that's a really good body tonic. It's good for liver function, good for gallbladder function. It's good for the blood, hyperviscosity of the blood, helps to normalize mineral deficiencies. You know, it does a lot of things for the body, and including digestion, especially liver and gallbladder issues. And so lemon can be taken kind of as a preventative or just maintenance. Like you say, you had a gallbladder issue, you went through and resolved it, but you also want to do some prevention. Lemon could be that go-to thing. You know, it helps to alkalize the body. The only issue with lemon is that if you put it on your skin and go out into the sun, sometimes it will change the color of the skin a little bit, especially where you applied it. And if you take large amounts of it internally and you go out in the sun, your skin might have a reaction. And so internally, it's not as much of an issue, but internally is pretty safe. But topically, if you put it on and you go out in some really direct sunlight, sometimes it will cause a discoloration. A spasmodic colitis, gripping pains in the gut, really bad gripping pains. And so a lot of issues of this nature are down in the low gut, and it can be very debilitating. I find that when this happens, you also kind of break into a sweat a little bit. You know, it kind of like makes you go a little bit into the fetal position, and it can be very uncomfortable. You know, sometimes it eases up after you go to the bathroom and have a bowel movement. But if you're a little bit prone to this, it can happen even with illness. You know, it could be something that your body is struggling with, but sometimes you'll start to get those gripping pains with certain kinds of influenzas and things like that. I have heard of a few cases of this with COVID, where people got gripping pains down in the lower abdomen due to COVID. And the recipe for that is clove. And again, needs to be internal. A couple drops of clove and water and you drink it. And so yeah, let's see what else we got here. Dysentery, diarrhea, galbanum can be helpful. Cinnamon is kind of the go-to one here. Hepatitis, there's different types of hepatitis. Clove isn't necessarily going to cure it, but clove can be helpful in reducing some of the symptoms in all forms of hepatitis. I have had a few cases where we were able to actually cure conditions of hepatitis with essential oils, and we did it with a little bit of clove, but we did it also with massive dosages of lavender, actually. And it didn't always work, but the times that it did work, it worked very, very quickly. You know, within 30 days, the person no longer showed signs of hepatitis, and the doctor said that, you know, they were testing negative. Liver stimulant, hepatic stimulant, you know, there's an oil, this isn't bergamot and mint mixed together. There's actually an oil called bergamot mint, and both that and neroli are very good for stimulating liver function. Peppermint is too, but for just an overall stimulant, peppermint's really good for the early stages of function in the liver, but like when you're really trying to jumpstart the liver for like kind of long-term function, more chronic conditions, bergamot, mint, and neroli, much better for this. Liver detoxification. You know, I looked at this as like a little bit of a long-term detoxification. Lemon works really well for this. Short term, if you're trying to do liver detoxification, helichrysum actually would work really well for this, and Greenland moss. Greenland moss, actually even carrot. Carrot can be good, but for just general liver detoxification, lemon is considered a very gentle long-term way. If you're doing the combination of Granulum moss, helichrysum, and carrot, that would be kind of a short, intense detoxification. And we are going to be talking about more intense ways of doing different kinds of detoxes in another class, or maybe even at the tail end of this class. And so, you know, here, these are just general things. Like if you're really going after something a bit more aggressively, there's more aggressive ways of doing this, but this is just safe, gentle ways to go through and treat these different conditions. Eyes affected by liver function. So this is kind of an interesting thing. You would notice this by the bugs in your eyes. You know how like when you wake up and you get all that like kind of slimy stuff in your eyes? That is due to liver function. And so if you wake up and your eyes are kind of glued closed and there's just a lot of that, it's not even mucusy stuff, but it's just, you know, those bugs in the eye or that slime that's in your eye, that can be reduced actually by consistent use of peppermint. And I usually have people take this in the morning, a couple drops of peppermint in the morning. That way you jumpstart the body throughout the day, and it helps to have the body function as the day progresses. And you don't have that issue of taking peppermint right before you go to bed. Liver regeneration, apparently I left blank. So let's fill this in with helichrysum, Greenland moss, and carrot. Liver secretions, you know, just the fluids and things generated by the liver. Hyssop decumbens works actually really well for this. Regular hyssop does not kind of do it. And, you know, the thing with hyssop decumbens, it is a little bit different than all the other hyssops, and it's more well tolerated by the body, especially when you're doing large dosages of something. Regular hyssop, if we inhale it, we put it on the body a little bit, it's good, but you know, you can't take really super big dosages of hyssop, and regular hyssop you wouldn't want to take internally, where hyssop decumbens you could take internally, and you could take really large dosages of it because it's so well tolerated. And so it does have a little bit of a different chemistry than regular hyssop. And you know, if you know, things like bile and things in the liver are not functioning properly, hyssop decumbens can actually be quite helpful for this. So again, stimulating liver functions. Frankincense and myrrh. Frankincense and myrrh is really interesting. You can use them individually or you can use them together, but they also help, you know, here it's a little bit more of like the hormonal component that happens with the liver, but frankincense and myrrh is really good for all kinds of glandular stimulation, you know. So when we talk about endocrine function, we'll be talking about, you know, secretions of the glands being jump-started. And one of the ways that you do that is you use frankincense and myrrh together. And so patchouli actually has a pretty decent impact in this particular arena. Again, going back to stimulating liver function, peppermint, but frankincense and myrrh, you know, we have the blend 3 Wiseman. It works really well for that. Yeah. Metabolic secretions, again, just metabolic processes and even digestive processes. Hyssop decumbens works really super good. Any sort of spasms in the gut that is like kind of non-specific, you know, you can get it from all kinds of reasons. And sometimes it's because of misalignments. in the body that can cause tension and spasms in the gut. The bergamot mint and the mandarin, it can be taken internally, and it can also be applied topically. Upset stomach, all of these work. My kind of go-to one is usually tarragon. And let's open this up to now Q&A. So let's keep it to digestive functions. And, you know, there's more things that we could cover, and I'll be adding more notes to this, but this was just a good starting off point.
And you can unmute yourself. You can type in the chat. If you want to keep questions private, type them over to me at Samantha Durfee, and I'll be able to help you that way.
Yeah. So unmute yourself or type in, just go ahead and fire away.
Go ahead.
Anything
Ralph
goes.
and Cindy.
Hey, morning, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good this morning. Question on liver. You were talking about the liver.
Yes.
And the effects on the eyes.
Yes.
So we have a person who has problems in the eye with, you know, just problems in the eyes, period. And they also have a history of constipation. Would the liver impact that?
So what kind of issue with the eyes? What do we know?
Secondary macular edema, cyst growing in the edema in the eye?
Probably not. I mean, treating liver doesn't hurt, but it's probably not going to help that.
Okay.
Like you would like liver related issues with the eyes is usually just that gummy stuff that appears in the eyes.
Okay.
But it's not going to affect like all eye issues. It's just kind of that one component. And so I mean, you could try, but probably wouldn't help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we treat liver function, will that also impact constipation?
Hard to say.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like constipation can happen for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes tension in the gut. You know, there's that blend, the digestive calm. You know, applying that on the gut a lot of times can be very, very helpful because it will relax the smooth muscle. And we get a lot of tension in the gut that we don't even really realize because we don't have the sensory nerve impact. And so tension in the gut can cause anxiety. It can cause, you know, malfunctioning of the digestive tract, but also it can throw the diaphragm into like a spasm or tension, and also your psoas, your hip flexors. And so, you know, it's not something that we necessarily recognize, but if you go through and you unwind the digestive tract, the tension in the digestive tract, it starts to make the breath get a little bit better. It loosens up the low back. It does a lot of different things. And so, the thing with the tension is like anytime like you're in situations where there's like aggression or a chaotic situation, it actually increases the tension in the gut because your body and chaos or like when somebody's being adversarial or aggression towards you, the body tenses up the gut and the throat to protect itself. You know, it's like it's trying to keep injury from happening. Just like if you're getting a car accident, you saw the car, you know, you're sliding and you're going to hit the car, your whole body tenses up to try to prevent the body from getting injured. The gut and the throat do that when there's chaos or somebody's projecting negativity towards you. And so the gut has tension in it on a regular basis. Like, you know, it's one of those things that even though you go through and unwind it, doesn't mean that that's just it and you're done. You constantly have to unwind the gut. And so that can be a source of constipation. Sometimes enzymes and bacteria can be off. Sometimes it's a lubrication issue. And so one of the things that I also do, especially like usually the digestive calm is my kind of go-to thing. You know, I have them either inhale like lemongrass or I apply the digestive calm to the gut. And then if that doesn't produce a big bowel movement and then kind of consistent bowel activity, then I start looking at other things. And so you have a couple issues here. So one can be that it needs more lubrication. And one of the easiest ways of doing this is to have them ingest flax oil. Like it could be flax seed, it could be flax oil, flax capsules, you know, the flax oil capsules.
Yeah.
And if that's an issue, it will change that dynamic pretty quickly. You know, it will, within a dosage or two, they'll have a big bowel movement, right?
Okay.
Then the other thing is sometimes the mucous membranes are like impacted. You know, that's the best way of saying it. Like the mucus gets real like thick and doesn't allow for proper movement in the digestive tract. And you know, like the little the surface of the inside surface of the digestive tract is impacted, so things just don't move like they should. And so you have a couple of things that you can use here. The one that I kind of use a lot is Schizandra. Like if you do Schizandra, one of the things that it does is it helps to like moisten the mucous membranes of the whole body. So digestive tract, respiratory tract, the eyes, you know, everything. Schizandra is really good for moistening everything because it basically helps the body transmute and utilize water. So it basically hydrates tissue. And so you can even take it a step further where, like, you know, when you have tendon and ligament issues, part of the issue is the fascia, the connective tissue, and basically how you release fascia. One of the ways to do it is by hydrating it. Like, you know, when you hydrate it, it loosens up and is able to unwind. And so they even say Schizandra is good for helping to build healthy tendons and ligaments. And so again, that shows how it impacts how the body utilizes water. Then you also have like the movement of the digestive tract, like when you take in food and then it goes through and just starts the wave movement. One of the ways to improve that is cinnamon. Cinnamon can be incredibly good for that. It usually doesn't happen right off the bat. It usually takes a few dosages, but like I would say within a few days to a week of treating that, the person usually starts to have more regulated bowel movements. You know, like an easy way to treat something like that also is to just increase fiber content when they're going through and eating. You know, you can take psyllium or something like that.
Yeah.
And the psyllium also has like a cleansing effect on the mucous membranes and some of the aspects of the digestive tract. But cinnamon is a way to jumpstart it very, very quickly.
Okay.
And then what was the other thing? I can't remember. Constipation.
Constipation and eye problems. I'll talk about eye problems more when we get there, but I just wondered, because you had mentioned that the liver could impact the eyes.
Yeah, it's more just the gummy deposits. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later. Thanks.
Yeah. You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Cindy, then Kathy, then
Hey, Cindy.
Hey. So this is about dosage. What is the difference between putting a couple of drops of the essential oil in a capsule and a couple of drops in water? When you take
yeah, not a big difference. Like so when you put it in a capsule, you know, you take an empty capsule and you put a couple drops in. I would actually add a little bit of something like olive oil or coconut oil or something, just so when the oil hits the gut, it's mixed with something rather than just being, you know, pure and then potentially hitting an area and being maybe a little bit irritating. You would only see that the irritation part with something that's like usually something hot, like maybe cinnamon. The other one that you would potentially notice that with would be actually lemongrass. You know, I forget sometimes, because sometimes I'll just put a couple drops of something on my tongue and just swallow it and then wash it down with water, you know, 5 minutes later or something. And whenever I do that with lemongrass, it causes a little bit of irritation in my gut. Like, you know, it's not like a cramp, but there's like a weird tension for about 15, 20 minutes. And if I put it in a capsule with some oil or in water and drink it, never happens. But if I just put it on my tongue, it happens almost every time. And so, you know, I've been doing this for years. I still forget sometimes, and I still I won't think about it, and I'll put it on the tongue. And so, if you are using capsules, I actually really like doing it that way. It's a little bit more complicated because you have to have the capsules. And then, you know, a lot of times what I do is I take like a bottle that has just olive oil, and I'll add the olive oil like that. You know, have something ready to go to make the capsules. And man, it's a great way to do it. Another way that you could do it is you can use like capsules of charcoal, you know, and open up the capsules of charcoal, take the cap off and put a couple drops in and close it. That's one way of doing it. I kind of don't like doing that consistently, because charcoal is really good for reducing diarrhea, but it can cause, if you use it a lot, you know, because it's absorbent, so it helps to absorb toxins, but at some point it actually will start to cause a little bit of constipation. And so I'm a big fan of charcoal though. And then you could also put it on like a little piece of bread, or like when I was originally shown like 30 something years ago, the kind of go-to thing was we would put a couple drops on a sugar cube and then put the sugar cube in your mouth. And then you just kind of suck on the sugar cube like a lozenge. And I find that it worked. I prefer water or the capsule, but you know, you kind of use whatever you have around, and it's something that you could do, but yeah, it's not one that I do very often. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've done a sugar cube. You know, in the early days, I did it all the time, but it's just because that's what we were shown. So you can get a little bit creative or, you know, inventive with it. You know, the idea is to mix it with something so that it's not just pure essential oil hitting some part of your gut. So you can mix it anyway, anyhow. You know, you can even mix it in with your food a little bit, you know, however you want to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
But both very, very effective.
Okay. So one more thing, or two more. For the Pomarosa, what is the dosage?
So I usually have people use about 2 drops, but if you think you have that issue, you could do 2 or 3 drops, and you could do it a couple of times a day. You know, you could do more, but after 2 or 3 drops twice, I don't know that it's doing a whole lot more for the bacteria issue. You know, it might be doing some other things, but for the bacteria issue, that's pretty much nailing that issue. And then it just needs to be consistent on a daily basis. And so if you're doing it twice a day, I just say morning and then night. Like, you know, you don't have to worry about like taking things to work or anything like that. But I would say for the friendly bacteria, at some point, I think everybody should visit that. Like, you might not have a big issue, but bacteria gets thrown off for all kinds of reasons. And just from time to time, just like you would do little tune-ups for your computer, or you go out and you clear all the cookies from your computer, or you flush out a bunch of, you know, fragments, you defrag your computer or whatever they call that. You know, it's good just to do little tune-up things to your body. And hitting that friendly bacteria issue in the gut, I mean, everybody can use that. Everybody can use that. Like, I'll think that I don't have an issue with that at all, and I'll start doing it. And like within 3 or 4 days, I was like, man, I feel better. I literally feel better. And I don't stink as bad. You know, like sometimes my checking my armpits is what I'll use is like, oh, my friendly bacteria is off. And you know, I would say don't wait till that component kind of comes up. I would just, you know, like maybe once a year for like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month, you just every day treat with Pomarosa. And, you know, if it continues to make you feel better, go longer. But, you know, unless you have some big issue there, I would treat it like once a year, at least for 30 days, going through and just strengthening and stimulating that friendly bacteria.
Okay, thanks. For yarrow, what's the dosage?
So yarrow is 2 to 3 drops, and you know, yarrow works good in water. This is one that works exceptionally well in capsules. Given all the choices, yarrow and a little bit of olive oil or coconut oil in a capsule works really well, just because, you know, a lot of times the bleeding is farther down the digestive tract, you know, it's not up high. And so taking the capsule gets it further down the digestive tract. And if you take it in water, it still works pretty good. But like in really severe cases, I actually do put that in a capsule. Usually it's a really severe health issue where they have just really bad bleeding colitis or really super bad diverticulitis, where they potentially might, you know, have to be hospitalized, or, you know, they're looking at a surgical intervention. That's when I'll start doing the capsules. If it's just like, you know, acute to like maybe medium chronic, I still just have them put it in water and drink it. It's the easiest thing. The issue with the yarrow sometimes is you have a couple issues with yarrow. So one is if you're giving it to somebody, they don't always like the taste. You know, it has like a kind of a weird, strong taste, and it doesn't taste like anything other than, you know, yarrow. It's, you know, it's got a, I don't think it smells funky. I really like the smell, but not everybody likes it. And so we've had people not use it because they couldn't handle drinking it. So again, goes back to the capsules. The other thing too is, it's very good for reducing inflammation. It's very good for a lot of things. But if you take yarrow every day for longer than about 3 to 4 weeks, it actually prevents the absorption of iron. And so over a long period of time, it's not the greatest thing to use on a daily basis, like longer than a month. You know, you use it for 3 or 4 weeks and then just take a week off. That's all you got to do. Like take a week off and then you can go back to using it a couple more weeks. So rule of thumb is use it for 2 or 3 weeks, week off, and then 2 or 3 weeks, week off. This doesn't impact the absorption of iron, but yarrow is not something you would use like as a tonic oil or a tonic herb, you know, because of the impact of the absorption of iron. You use it to treat something, and then when it gets better, you stop. And so that's one that you can use kind of all the time, but with breaks. And so as long as you do that, you're solid. You know, it works so good at that you know, there's certain conditions where they have excessive amounts of iron in the body, like excessive amounts of red blood cells and iron in the body. And I've used yarrow to treat that, and it actually helped to regulate that mechanism. It's a very rare condition, but it does reduce that a bit. And so, you know, in the right application, you would use it for long periods of time. But for most people, 2 or 3 weeks, a break, 2 or 3 weeks, a break, 2 or 3 weeks, a break. But usually even in really severe cases where there's bleeding and inflammation, after like 2 or 3 days, you'll find that the person usually stops using it because you find so much relief in that first, like, say, 3 days of treatment, that the discomfort is usually the motivating factor, and they stop using it because they feel better, and so then they'll go, I'll take it a little bit less, or I'll take it tomorrow. And so they kind of almost self-regulate on their own, but just be sure that it's not longer than 2 or 3 weeks at a time. 3 weeks is breaking point. Like 2 weeks, you're still pretty solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah. And if it's really severe, have them take it internal and then several drops in the hand and a little bit of lotion or massage oil or witch hazel or something, and then also rub it on the gut. Because you're reducing inflammation internally and topically. It won't stop the bleeding that way, but it will stop the inflammation. And bleeding, like here when we're talking about bleeding, it's more of like up in the digestive tract. It's not hemorrhoids. Like hemorrhoids, you would use something more like cypress or something just to reduce the size of the veins in and around the rectum and everything. And so yarrow is not really kind of the go-to thing for that. But if it's like up in the digestive tract, yarrow is the go-to thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Yarrow topically like that, do you have to take a break?
No, yarrow topically, you can do topically quite often. Yeah.
And then go ahead, Kathy, then Zakia.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey, so just a reminder, I'm the one with the face pain.
Yes.
Talk about it. I was gone for like 5 months and then it flared up. Mm-hmm. Really bad. This last bout was one of the worst. So I am seeing a surgeon next week. Of course, I haven't always been a candidate for surgery, but when I go to some alternative practitioners, and what he said was he thought I had herpes flare up, and he did a blood test. So I had like off the charts herpes, which I know is caused from stress. And I went through a stressful period when it returned. So he put me on an antibiotic, which I just had done a whole regime to repair my leaky gut. Things were good. Headaches were gone. So I took the antibiotic. It actually took some of the pain away. So I wasn't like tortured by it. But of course, now I'm worried about the intestines, and I do have Palmarosa. I haven't been taking it every day. So I'm going to increase that, to daily. Mm-hmm. But my 2 questions then is, what is the best for the herpes virus? Because I got off the antibiotics. It kind of stopped. It didn't help the pain anymore. It took the bad part of it off. Mm-hmm. Now I want to make sure my gut is sufficient because I probably killed a lot of stuff.
Right.
So the 2 things are how to repair the gut. And then I take Monarda because I want to prevent COVID. Right. So I don't know what else to do to make sure. And of course, stress. And I know you have a lot of things about stress. I just got out of hand.
Yeah. And stress can be all kinds of things. And so, the outbreak happened. So I would say a couple of things about the herpes. Like, did it manifest as like cold sores or anything?
No, I never get cold sores. They say viruses live in your body. Like I had some Epstein-Barr that was on the positive side, but the herpes was the highest when he did the test, when I went to him, and I'm just in tears. So those 2 things, but the herpes was what he gave me the antibiotic for. I get little around on my butt cheeks, not in the closer to the rectum or anything. I'll just get little blisters that are a little itchy, and then they'll dry out and they'll be gone every so often. But this is just internally, I guess.
Is it shingles or?
I know I've never really had shingles because I hear about shingles. I mean, although this pain feels probably what shingles should feel like. I don't really get a lot. I mean, I can tell sometimes just those slight little blisters, but they've never really indicated. I did read that herpes is exaggerated by stress. I did go through a stressful time. So it made sense, but I don't really have any physical manifestation of herpes much.
Yeah, so I would do L-lysine. you know, that from the health food store, big
Okay.
dosages of it, 3-4 capsules at a time.
3 to 4 lysine. Okay.
Yeah, L-lysine. And Melissa is really super good for herpes. And let me look up, I think there's one other thing that let me go through and look.
Now, did you say L-lysine or just
Right.
lysine?
Yeah, L-lysine. Yeah. Okay, give me just a sec here.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known the herpes really, except he did a blood test and it was way high.
Yeah, that's pretty insightful of that guy or whoever.
Yeah, because he just figured it was, you know, this something latches onto this nerve because I've had this over 20 years.
So the other ones are, and this comes from a medical aromatherapist in France. And in France, they're physicians. So they follow it up with blood work and everything. And, you know, it's not a quick fix, but two go-to oils, both would need to be taken internally. One would be lemon. And I would do, like, if you did lemon, I would do probably 6 or 8 drops in water consistently.
Once a day?
Yeah, at least once a day. That one you could get away with even twice a day.
Okay.
I mean, I've had patients where I've had them take, you know, I'm not telling people to do this, but like in extreme situations where we were trying to normalize a particular health issue, I've had them take like 30, 35 drops of lemon oil a day, you know, just like put it in a big water bottle and drink it down. Like lemon is something you could like mega dose with.
Now oil, not just squeezed lemon or both?
Squeezed lemon, you would have to do, you know, probably 12, 15 lemons. Like
Okay,
you could do it that way. You know, the other way to do it.
No, I have lemon oil. So
okay.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, you know, there's that thing from the grocery store, that big green bottle that's lemon juice, you know, because that's juice and lemon essential oil in that. Several tablespoons of that a day would work. The other one is geranium. Geranium is a very good antiviral, especially for herpes. You know, it helps calm it down. Like you could put it on the wrist, but you are going to have to take some of that internally. But you could augment by putting maybe 4 or 5 drops on the wrist. I wouldn't do that with lemon just because of the potential of interacting with the sunlight. But the geranium is helpful. Melissa is also helpful, but Melissa is also super expensive. And so, you know, if you have it, I would use it. But if not, I'd probably go the geranium route just to stay cost effective. And, you know, the Melissa probably works a little bit better than the geranium, but cost wise, it doesn't, the cost difference doesn't match up for how much more beneficial it is. You know what I mean? And so,
so geranium on the wrist and internally, and how many drops?
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 drops internally.
And once a day, or?
Yeah, daily. So like with taking things internally, like a casual dosage is 1 to 2 drops, you know, like pretty like that's what they would call a casual dosage, like pretty gentle. When you're needing to be a little bit more aggressive, you can kind of double that. Like, so like 3 to 4 drops is pretty solid. You know, if you're in crisis, I might bump it up a little bit more. And I think after a dosage or 2, it should start to calm down between that and L-lysine. So you don't have to take such a big dosage of that because you are taking some other things as well. You know, Monarda is a very good antiviral, but as far as treating the herpes virus, it's okay. Like it's not. I would do these other things first for herpes. Like Monarda is more like, you know, the viruses where you get sick, like, you know, colds, flus, things like that. And so it does impact viral activity in the body. But when you start to get specifics like this, where you have a flare up of the herpes virus, then I would still continue with the Monarda, but I wouldn't depend on Monarda to treat it. Yeah.
So then now to restore my gut, because I was on at least a couple weeks of the antibiotics, and I've quit them for a couple of days now because I felt they did whatever they're going to do.
Palmarosa.
Okay.
Are you having any like tendonitis or achy joints or anything like that? Stiff
Not
joints?
really.
Okay.
Not much achy joints.
Okay, because the issue that people don't really talk about sometimes with antibiotics is it can cause tendonitis, and so if that's the case, we'd go through and treat that. But if you're not really having a flare up, I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah. You know, the lemon would actually help flush some of the effects of the antibiotics out of the body, as well as, oh God, what is it? Like, I have to look it up now. Give me just a second. Different forms of thyme if you have like weird reactions to the antibiotics.
I haven't had weird reactions. I'm just worried about the gut because I had spent a lot of efforts on cleaning it up, you know.
Yeah. Palmarosa is your thing then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing but just basically that. Now, I've also heard that you need to pull some of the effects of the herpes as it's dying off. Like a detox. They say some of these, like a herpes, as it dies off, there could be stuff that you need to pull out of your body and detox.
Yeah, like anytime you need to really like jumpstart detoxification, lymphatic function is always kind of the go-to thing. You know, detoxing like internal organs like liver, kidney function, you know, that's one thing. But here you're just talking about removing the metabolic waste and just the waste from the function. Lymphatic function should really handle all that.
Is that, I think I might have it. That's an oil that comes in the kit.
You could use lymphatic blend. You could use viscosity. You could use charcoal root cleanser. You could use cedar. You could use helichrysum. You could use lemongrass. You could use thyme, bay laurel.
I have practically all those. So
yeah, any of that will work.
Okay. Something else you said. Okay, yeah, if I think of it, I'll ask again. Okay, perfect. Thank you, because I so don't want to have surgery, but
no joke.
After 20 years, I just can't take any more of these huge flare-ups.
Especially that you had such a huge flare-up. Now, like, you know, at some point I'd go through and address the stress as well. Mm-hmm. But like, was it like things going on with you that were stressing you out? Or
yeah, we were renovating the house, and there was all this confusion about choices of wood, and I was trying to pick non-toxic things, you know, in the house, which is why we had all the carpet removed. And so as I look back, I'm going, boy, I thought I had better control over it, but that's when it started, is right at the end of that period.
Okay, so let's talk stress for just a minute. Like, this is jumping down. You know, stress I put under also the nervous system, because you know, a lot of times stress is actually almost always is a physiological response, not necessarily a psychological response. It affects the psychology eventually, but usually at first it is purely a physiological response. And so any type of fur, Palo Santo is really good for stress. So is basil, especially if stress is starting to affect your cognitive function. Like, you know, you're having a hard time like processing information, or the memory starts to go, or you start doing that thing. Oh, you know, that thing, you know, you start doing that. That's where basil would really come in. And then
I do basil almost when I get a bit of a headache, trying not to take aspirin for the gut. Yeah, I'll use basil for that. Quite frequently.
And then spikenard, valerian, super good for reducing stress.
Are all these internal?
You could actually get away with inhaling it or putting several drops on the wrist.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and then there's the blends, you know, the stress ease, the de-stress, you know, things like that. But, you know, here we're trying to talk a little bit more single oils and things. And so these would be your go-to things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to have surgery, but
I don't blame you.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Keep us posted on that too.
Oh yeah,
Especially,
I bring it up frequently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then go ahead, Zakia, then Tracy.
Hey, Zakia.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you? How's life out there on the East Coast?
I'm doing good. My recovery is going along well.
Oh, good.
So 2 questions. When
It
you
was
mentioned
the knee surgery. Is that what we're talking about?
yeah, the
Yeah,
knee
yeah.
surgery. It's
Okay.
been really, 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 really rough.
Yeah.
But I'm coming. I'm getting there. So I'm good.
Where are you at with the knee surgery? Like,
So I'm 7 months out.
But like, is it like still inflamed? Is it?
No, I just still have difficulty sitting and standing, and I can't do steps without the cane.
Okay. And is the leg getting stronger or not getting stronger?
Just this past week or 2, I'm having less pain and difficulty going up and down the steps when I go to work and sitting and standing. It's less painful. So I'm guessing that means it's getting stronger.
Okay, so when you're having difficulties, I know this isn't part of the digestive tract, but since I just have you on here, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to talk to you again. I want to address it. So it feels like your knee is going to give out, or it just feels like it has no strength?
It's just painful. It doesn't feel like it's going to give out. It's just painful.
Okay.
Like a month ago, it would feel like someone sticking me in the knee with a knife.
On the front, on the sides, in the back?
In the core, in the front core of the knee, in the middle of the knee. It was just, and we're talking both knees. I'm not even talking just the surgery knee.
So like below the kneecap or like deep within the joint?
Deep within the joint.
And the knee doesn't feel like it's going to buckle?
No. I used to have that. You told me about that before, but no, that's not it anymore.
How's your breath?
Fine. But I take CoQ10 twice a day.
Huh. Okay.
But since you brought it up, what you told me the last time I asked you about my knee surgery, you told me about putting the chakra root cleanser on all the joints and the vetiver.
Right.
That shit knocked me out. I was like 2 hours late getting up from work, but it worked in terms of the pain.
Okay.
It really, really worked.
Okay. And the pain is sharp or achy?
It used to be sharp, I would say 2 to 3 weeks ago. Now I'm guessing I'm getting better. It's dull. It's not subtle, but it's not like a sharp knife going anymore in my knee. It's just hurts. I just still have to be careful when I do steps and stand up and sit down. It used to be really, really sharp, but now it's not as sharp, but it's still there.
Okay. I mean, keep working lymphatic movement. You know, one of the things you might want to try is, you know, there's blends and things, but even if you just did continue with what you're applying, but maybe augment it with a little bit of lemongrass and like alcohol or witch hazel, like 10, 12 drops in like a tablespoon or 2 of like witch hazel or alcohol, rub it together and then rub it all over the knee.
Okay.
That might help some of the achiness, like either that or birch, like birch tar or birch. The pain relief blend is good for that. And then the birch complex is really super good for that. And let me find one more thing here.
So from all that you've taught me, I had made a roll-on oil with marjoram, and I included birch in it. Yeah,
perfect.
And then I would put mugwort straight on, a neat application, and then I would follow it up 10 minutes later with the roll-on oil with marjoram and birch.
Perfect, because you know. There's a blend that I make called pain relief antispasmodic, and
I have antispasmodic.
no, it's pain relief antispasmodic. So
Okay.
the antispasmodic is, so this is very specific to what we call incident pain. And like, so when you move something and pain increases, that's what incident pain is. And so like if you're resting, like the pain goes down or goes away, and then you get up and move and that starts to hurt again.
Right.
And so you're needing to reduce spasms and the pain that comes from the movement. And so let me look up the formula. Give me just a sec here. Yeah, wintergreen, helichrysum, and one that you wouldn't think of is cajeput or cajeput.
Yes, I have that.
Could be very helpful for that as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
So let's get to what you were going to ask about digestion.
You had made earlier comment about a liver detoxing, and you had mentioned a blend of carrot, helichrysum, and Greenland moss. What's the
Correct.
proportions?
Equal parts.
Equal parts. And are we talking carrot seed oil?
The essential oil.
Carrot seed essential oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there is a carrot seed carrier oil as well.
Right. And Kathy had mentioned Monarda. What would the application be to prevent COVID with Monarda? Because I have that as
internal,
well.
Like a couple of drops internal.
Like first thing in the morning or something?
Just anytime during the day. Like just
a couple of drops under the tongue.
Yeah. I would put it in water and drink it because it's got a little bit of a bite to it.
Okay.
Like you'll feel it in the throat.
So, but you wouldn't do that every day. I'm not.
Yep.
Oh.
Every day.
Oh. Throughout this pandemic?
You can use it if you feel that you're trying to prevent exposure, but I would take it pretty often. We used it for a long time through traveling, and then I got to where I stopped using it, and I got COVID. I got a real mild case of it, but still, I traveled 3 years on airplanes and everything, was using it, never had an issue. And then I stopped using it because I just got.
A week?
What's that?
You used it daily or a couple of times a week?
I used it daily. And then I just got lazy because,
nothing was happening.
Yeah, wasn't having an issue. And then, we got a mild case of it.
Are you vaccinated?
Yes.
I'm only asking because I'm just trying to think of how it's most effective. Okay. Because I work in a hospital, so I had to, get vaccinated. But great. Because it's funny you mentioned that, because I was supposed to do an event today. And the hosts were not having any COVID regulations, no masks, no nothing. So I didn't go. Because, I just don't want to be open and you don't know who's in the crowd, whatever. Yeah. We
did it because we just have to travel and, go.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, some places we couldn't go to if we weren't vaccinated. So
Right. I think that's it. I'm sorry I don't have anything else to talk to you a bit longer, but thanks so much.
You're so.
And then go ahead, Tracy, then Lisa, then Linda.
Hello.
Hey.
So Brian brought COVID back from Las Vegas. And I was doing great. Like
most people bring like t-shirts and
Right. Thanks, Brian. What's funny is he was in a booth with some of his Chinese businessmen that had come from China, but they got it from an uncle that lives in the US, which I thought was kind of ironic and funny. But so I was doing great and like keeping it away from me. I was doing all the stuff, and actually the body felt so much stronger after last weekend's class that I was doing like one of the Sandalphon protocols every day.
Yeah, tremendous.
Yeah, but fast forward to Wednesday or Thursday. I had to crawl under the crawl space to look for something because we have a problem in the house. And Brian didn't feel like doing it because it really hit him hard this time.
Yeah.
There was mold under there. And does it make sense that when I smelled the mold, it was almost like it gave, I don't have a bad case of COVID, but I know I've got it.
Yeah, it makes total sense because you like anytime, I mean, that's the thing with COVID is anytime that the respiratory tract is compromised, your potential for COVID is substantially greater. And so, you know, being exposed to molds or funguses, you know, causes a little bit of inflammation in the respiratory tract, which can make viruses and bacterias more likely to impact the respiratory tract. And so it makes total sense. Yeah.
So should I just keep doing what I'm doing that I know has been working, like the bay laurel and the breathing?
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing with viruses, like once they're kind of engaged in the body, they're going to go through their cycle, right? But what you try to do is minimize the impact that the virus has on you. Like it's kind of like a burn. Like if you can catch it right at the beginning, you can knock it out. But like after it engages like a certain stage of reproduction, you're just trying to minimize the effects. And so, you know, things like bay laurel, Eucalyptus radiata, Ravensara, especially if there is fatigue, which is very common with COVID, there's fatigue. The Ravensara can be very, very helpful. I like to also use thyme, but I tend to go to like softer forms of thyme for this, just because you're going to be using it for a little bit and you're going to take potentially bigger dosages of it. So you're looking at benchmark thyme, thyme thionol, thyme geranol, thyme linalool. All of those would mix really well with the Ravensara. And
Moroccan thyme?
What's that?
Moroccan thyme? That's what I've been taking.
Yeah. I mean, Moroccan thyme's a little bit more geared towards autoimmune issues. And so if you're already predisposed to a little bit of a potential autoimmune issue, I would definitely use Moroccan thyme instead. I really like Moroccan thyme just because it's more anti-inflammatory than any of the other thymes. Like it's very anti-inflammatory. Moroccan thyme is a little bit better for chronic infections, especially chronic low-grade infections. That sometimes there's infections in the body that don't even show up with medical testing, but they're there. You know, they're just so low level. And Moroccan thyme, like Moroccan thyme mixed with like myrrh or something like that, knocks that stuff out like nobody's business. You know, even Moroccan thyme by itself, but usually I mix it with like myrrh or papanox, something like that. And it will knock out the infections. And so anything you're doing to support the immune system right now is good, but you're wanting to minimize the effects of the viral activity. So bay laurel, radiata, Ravensara, I would put an emphasis on Ravensara, and some form of thyme.
So the Ravensara you take internally as well?
You can take internally, and you could put big dosages of it like on your back. Like
okay.
Back, or, you know, I guess you could do abdomen too, but you know, when we were traveling, most times what I would do is I'd come back and I'd put either like bay laurel or Ravensara, like a lot on my back. And then, you know, just like as I was going to bed, and then, you know, that would be that. And for 3 years, we didn't have a problem. And I just stopped doing the protocol because I just got so used to not having an issue. And then, you know, we got a really super low grade form of it. You know, we basically didn't have any symptoms. We just had a little bit of fatigue and, you know, just basically tested positive. So still was super low grade, but still, you want to unwind, even if there's no real symptoms, you still want to unwind some of the effects of the viral activity. So going back to the things we just talked about.
Okay, up and up. I can't say the word.
Up and nuts.
Thank you. That one also internally?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So do you think it's okay to take time? You've told me before, because of my body and everything, that I needed the lighter types of thyme. So if I took thyme linalool, could I also take the thyme, the Moroccan thyme? Because
oh, sure.
This body has like a low grade infection almost all the time in my sinuses, somewhere in my sinuses, that it seems like it goes away, but it never really does.
So, you know, I've had a few people who were talking about that. You know, a lot of times what that is stress in the respiratory tract. And it's not emotional stress, it's not mental stress, it is literally stress in the respiratory tract. And we just actually around here, we made a blend for that, and we found that it was getting rid of some of the headaches. It releases and relaxes fascia, and it reduces some of, I'm going to tell you what's in it, so give me a sec here. So it was heavy on the larch and heavy on galbanum. But then it had basil, Amivus naga, Palo Santo, and very specific hemlock spruce. Like hemlock spruce is and larch are probably your two best bets for reducing stress in the respiratory tract. And so it can get stress from infection, it can get stress from stress coming up from the solar plexus, strained breathing, but also, you know, we forget about how much impact the respiratory tract has on the fascia and muscle in the body, and then how much muscle and fascia impacts the respiratory tract. And then also the other one for the respiratory tract is the skin. Like, you know, if the skin's real super congested, it actually vastly impacts the respiratory tract. And so with that, you know, even muscular issues. That's why, like, for example, when you have nerve pain, your respiratory tract, basically your bronchioles go into spasm, your diaphragm goes into spasm. But if I use different terminology, when you're in pain, when you have sharp pain in the body, your respiratory tract goes into a stress response. Like it's super stressed out. And so the byproduct of that is tight diaphragm, bronchial spasms, and potential sinus issues, be it congestion, inflammation, infection, you know, any of those things. And they can even manifest as clogging in the ears, like, you know, your ears get plugged up.
You just talked about me completely. So what is this?
Yeah.
Tracy's blend called?
What do we call it? I gave it a really
clinical-ish name.
Yeah, super clinical name. It's pulmonary stress support.
Is it on the website?
You know, we made it, and I even got a massage with it a couple of days ago, and it knocked me out. I don't think we've even put it on the site, but we'll put it on today. It's not expensive.
Thank you. That sounds exactly
like one of the things is, you know, I had been kicking it around for a while, because the issue is that stress in the respiratory tract also impacts our emotions, and it actually impacts the mind somewhat. It basically impacts limbic responses. And so limbic responses are like our emotional responses, our emotional learning, our drive for reward, and you know, the effect of pain or discomfort on the body. You know, we have all these learning mechanisms associated with limbic function. And so limbic function makes up lower mental activity and lower emotional activity, and is the precursor to like higher emotional states, or diminishes higher emotional states. And so one of the things that we're looking at, I have like a really super fancy blend for treating that, but it's really super expensive. And I was just like, you know, because we're looking at it for the Streams of Consciousness class that's in August for you know, it's part of the psychological series that we're doing, you know, inner healing next weekend, the 4 directions, and then the Streams of Consciousness. And so, you know, going deeper and deeper into limbic function, because it increases spiritual growth. It is very healing for psychological issues, breaking patterns, states of happiness or wellness, sense of well-being, you know, all these kinds of things. But your lower emotions and the lower mind have a big impact on overall healing in the body and the overall health of the body. So you could say psychological healing, but at the same time, it is making the body function better by going through and addressing these things. And so one of the ways that you unwind the limbic responses, another way of saying that too, is the unconscious. You know, you're tapping into flushing things and releasing things from the unconscious. And it's things that we've been doing, but we're going deep on these things because, you know, the unconscious makes up more of our psyche, and more, it impacts our overall health to a much greater degree than our conscious mind, right? And so by going through and unwinding aspects in the limbic responses, like we did in the I am presence and all that, we're going much deeper with this. The first step is reducing stress in the respiratory tract. You know, it's not just like taking spasms out, you're actually targeting stress. And, you know, the stress response is anytime the body has been pushed out of balance. And so basically what we're talking about is, for whatever reason, the respiratory tract, the respiratory system has been pushed out of balance. And so could be illness, could be muscular issues, could be fascial restrictions, lesions, could be trigger point activity, you know, because trigger point activity and limbic function are 2 sides of the same coin. You know, they are so intertwined there. And so by going through and unwinding this, it helps to release things. It prevents the tendency to generate or magnify lower emotions, because when there's stress in the respiratory tract, the tendency is to have a little bit more shallow breath, a little bit more rapid breath, and it basically generates stress in the body, and that magnifies lower emotions. And whatever issue you're having, like say you're angry at somebody, or say you're frustrated, or you feel depressed, when there's stress in the respiratory tract, all of that gets magnified. Like whatever it is, like it is like putting steroids on whatever it is, because the breath becomes more shallow and rapid. And so it just amplifies, excuse me, what is ever in the solar plexus or is lacking in the solar plexus. And so by going through and unwinding this, for one, the head feels better, the breathing's better, it eases the symptoms and the sinuses and the ears and everything. And then on a deeper level, it starts to diminish the emotions, and like I would say, even the tendency to get triggered, you know? So what can happen is like something like somebody would say poke you a whole bunch and you get triggered and respond, but like you go through and you start unwinding the limbic system like this, they take the poke and you're like, that's really upsetting, that's really hurtful. But instead of reacting or getting triggered, you're able to go, yeah, that person's being a little bit of a jerk. What's up with their behavior? How should I handle this? Like what is the strategy that we put in place to handle this person acting in this particular way? Where before you would be like, you know what? F you, you would just react. And so by going through and doing this, it has more impact than just sinuses, and so when I was doing a lot of corporate work, sometimes I would do treatments on people in the workplace. It was usually like key people. I wasn't just doing it on everybody, but there was 3 or 4 things that were always there. The tendency was headaches or migraines, low back pain, high blood pressure, and then the really big one was sinus issues. And all of it is because of stress. I mean, it's stress responses, it's body tension, it's lack of sleep, it's fatigue, it's people being aggressive towards you, it's, take your choice. Like the respiratory tract gets impacted for a lot of reasons, environmental factors, illness, it's one of those things that you just constantly have to stay on top of. And if you look at spiritual practices, a lot of respiratory function, like controlling the breath, deepening the breath, regulating the breath, doing certain cadences with the breath, doing the balancing breathing, using your head with the breath. The breath is the key. The breath is how you access the unconscious. The breath is how you unwind the limbic system. And think of the limbic system as basically the mechanisms for conditioning of all your experiences, good or bad. Now, usually when we're talking about limbic responses, it's the negative experiences. So.
Well, everything you just said there is like, yep, got that. Yep, got that.
Yeah,
yep.
It's everybody. Like, you could look at even what's gone on with the pandemic over the last 2-3 years and just all the changes and everything. There's the strain on the respiratory tract from the illness, the potential illness, but life's been in chaos. There's been lots of change. There's been the wearing of masks that made you strain more to breathe. That puts stress on the respiratory tract. There's all kinds of things that put you at risk with respiratory stress or pulmonary stress. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get some of that oil and I appreciate it.
Yeah. For a while, I was just playing with galbanum and palo santo just because of their impact on limbic function. And then like I was visiting all the spruces and, I was, because I love me some spruce Sitka, Sitka. I love Sitka. And I was thinking, oh, Sitka's the one. And it was helping, but it wasn't quite nailing it. But when we started using the hemlock spruce and then larch, larch has been a new acquisition in the last year. And so for years, we didn't have access to larch. So back in the old days, I had to go to something really fancy. And so now with larch, it's a game changer. And so, larch does a lot of things, but that is one of them, the impact on respiratory stress and on limbic function.
Do you think until I get the blend, if I did one after the other?
Yeah, sure. Any of those. I mean, for a longest time, I was using galbanum. I would just inhale galbanum, put it on my ajna, and just call it good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Lisa, then Linda.
Hey,
then
Lisa.
Sophia.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so
you?
much for doing this. It's been really helpful. I wanted to address, I guess this falls in digestive, which is a huge topic.
Yeah, yeah. We could talk all day about digestion. You know what I mean?
Gosh, it's like the second brain, I've been told.
Yeah,
but So when I was 28, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It was active for about 10 years. And so since about 2000, it's been really haven't had problems with it. But about 6 years ago, I was going through extreme stress. So I think this really impacted it. I got all these food intolerances.
Okay.
So gluten, sugar, grains, and processed sugar is the worst.
Okay.
And I can't, whenever I eat that stuff, I see like inflammation in my body, my cheeks get red. And then the sugar really affects the bladder. Like the bladder, I feel like I have to go every 5 minutes if I do a lot of sugar. So can you speak to...
Is there any blood sugar issues like diabetes or hypoglycemia?
No, I've always checked my blood sugar and it's been perfect, you know.
Okay.
It's always perfect.
Uh-huh.
So, but I'd never had these problems before. So I don't know if you can address food intolerances.
Yeah, so let me just look something up real quick. I want to... how's the colitis?
The colitis, since about 2000, it's really been in remission. I kind of went on a vegetarian diet and I made a few changes, but it's caffeine, like coffee, like that'll really notch it up. And if I'm pretty clean about my diet and minimizing stress, it seems to really keep it in remission.
So, okay, so let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the part you just asked. So the colitis with the ulcers, the kind of go-to oils for that. The big one would be chamomile. Like you could use any form of chamomile. I would probably use German chamomile if you had a really bad flare-up. And if you were wanting to do prevention, Roman chamomile, Roman or Cape.
Okay.
Yeah, and in water, like a couple drops of water and drink it.
Okay.
You could rotate it with geranium, and those would be your best bet. But like long-term prevention would be lemon in water.
Oh,
lemon in water and drink it. Like but like if it's a flare-up, go to the chamomiles, like chamomile and even geranium. But then prevention-wise, and then the other one is not an oil, it's an herb. But when you have just like ulcers or like this, like where you have colitis, where it's starting to cause like, you know, abrasions or, you know, adhesions, anything like that, ulcers. The other thing is slippery elm. Like
I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, and you could take it in capsules, you could take it in a tincture, but I would probably actually get it in the powder form and make a tea out of it. Especially like when you're having a bad flare-up or like nothing is settling in your stomach, I would go to some slippery elm. And so take like a big heaping tablespoonful and put it in with like a couple cups of water, you know, so like 2 cups of, you know, measuring cups full of water, and then like boil it, let it cool, and then boil it again. And then, you know, you can kind of let it cool a little bit and then drink it like tea. And like, you know, when people have such upset stomachs that they can't even keep water down, they can keep slippery elm down. Like slippery elm is so soothing to the gut and to any sort of ulcer type activity in the gut. I mean, it is just amazing. And so for a while, I would get these, they were like throat lozenges, but they were just, they were a slippery elm. And you could probably find them on like Amazon or something. And you, I think the brand name is Thayer's.
Oh,
want
yeah.
to say it's Thayer's. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
familiar.
very old school remedy. And,
Okay.
you know, yeah, it's kind of helpful for the throat, but I did it more for what it did for the digestive tract. Like I would just get them and like, you know, I don't have the patience to sit and suck on the lozenge. So I would just like chew 2 or 3, make my stomach feel good. And so you could do a form of that, and it's a very easy way to go through and treat.
Okay.
You can actually eat the slippery elm like oatmeal, you know, like even after you've made the tea, you could actually take a spoonful and like chop it down, and can be very helpful as well. So keep all of that in mind when you have the flare up. You know, because it's also helping to reduce some inflammation and things. But so whenever you're having that inflammatory response, black cumin is always good. Yarrow, you know, again, going back to the chamomile. Chamomile is probably your better choice just because of what you've got going on. But now let's talk about food sensitivities.
Like, so that's the biggest one.
Yeah. So most times when you're dealing with the food sensitivities it's the poor innervation to the gut, and innervation being the nerves to the gut. And so here you're looking at that ANS support. ANS support, taking 2 or 3 drops, and you kind of need to do it on a regular basis. So you go through and you treat that over a period of time. And, you know, like this weekend, I was really trying to make this about like simplified treatments, where like something like this would be a little bit more of an involved treatment. And so we are going to do another wave of this class where we build on this class, where we start to do more involved treatments in things. So let's just talk out what that looks like here, right? So food sensitivities is when you would do ANS support, right? So if you don't have ANS support, like anise, rosemary, tarragon, any of those things, again, in water, and you're taking it. Then the other thing you're wanting to do is the digestive calm. You're wanting to take tension out of the smooth muscle of the gut. So you can put it on with the witch, you know, in the witch hazel base, or in a massage oil base, you know, whatever that is, because here you're reducing the tension of the gut, but also by doing that, you're relaxing the diaphragm and you're relaxing the psoas, which is your hip flexors. And the next phase is the diaphragm sometimes gets really tight and it compresses some of the lymphatic vessels and basically makes the gut toxic. And you know, the gut can't quite detoxify like it should. So you want to reduce the tension, and then you want to treat lymphatic function in the gut. And so there's that blend, digestive lymph, but then let me look it up and I can tell you some single ways to do. Yeah, I'm trying not to do a lot of these things from memory because I forget things. So digestive lymph is basically, you could use carrot, like carrot oil, carrot essential oil. And there's rosemary camphor, which I think we have it on the site. I'm not even sure if we have it on the site. But here's the interesting thing about this blend is, so this blend of carrot seed essential oil and rosemary camphor, it's very good for moving the lymph in the gut. Also, you could use any of the grasses like African bluegrass, ginger grass, camel grass. Those are all good too. But this combination of carrot and rosemary camphor is a little bit stronger, and it moves the lymph, very specific to the digestive tract. But the other interesting thing about it, it also helps to reduce cholesterol in the bloodstream. So
that's what I need.
So it has an impact on liver function, but it also has an impact on cleaning up the blood. And rosemary camphor especially is really super good for the physical heart. And so really severe heart issues, we use rosemary camphor. And you know, you have to be a little bit more careful with taking rosemary camphor internally, other than like regular rosemary. And so I don't talk about it a whole lot because of that, but topically you could go crazy with it. You know, you could totally go crazy with it. And so, and actually the old medical aromatherapist that I referenced this information from, did the carrot seed and the rosemary camphor topically for cholesterol. Now, I would say if cholesterol is the issue, going back to rosemary, verbenin, and cypress is taken internally is your best bet. And the digestive lymph would be a secondary application to go through and treat it. I wouldn't use it as the primary. I'd still use the rosemary, verbenin, cypress combination, which you can use those and just mix them together, or we do that thing called cholesterol support, which is basically just those two things. I would do that internally and then put the digestive lymph on, and that can be very helpful to cholesterol.
Okay.
And so that combination, all of that should be helpful. Every once in a while, you still might need to relax the diaphragm somewhat. So the use of like some form of hyssop or larch or, you know, something like that just to relax the diaphragm. But a lot of times putting the digestive comb on would actually reduce it enough to where you might not even need more treatment than that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you do all that, that should reduce food sensitivities. Every once in a while, we need to do one extra step, which would be to put a bunch of like chamomiles or yarrows and milfoil like on the gut. Chamomile complex would be a good one, or just one of the single oils. But I don't even include that in the treatment protocol until, you know, maybe there needs to be some, because basically you're trying to re-educate the gut. Are stress levels pretty high for you?
I don't think so, but
how's your sleep? Are you sleeping well?
I sleep pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the other component is like sometimes you can also calm and soothe the nerves of the gut with like the Paracelsus blend or the single oils, the what's the one that smells like wormwood, but it starts with an A. I can't think of it right now. I want to say Artemisia, but it's not it.
Absinthium.
Absinthium. Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah, absinthium on the gut. Opopanox might work by itself, but like wormwood or absinthium are usually the kind of go-to ones for calming and soothing the nerves of the gut.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's been super helpful.
So
thank you for doing this.
And then go ahead, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Hey, Greg. Thank you so much. This is incredible.
Oh, good. I'm glad you guys are enjoying. It's just
and Lisa, everything he just told you was like totally relevant for me. So
good. I mean, honestly, it's relevant for most of us. Like
even
if we don't
stuff,
have full-blown issues, still who couldn't use a little better like gut health or gut, you know, whatever. And so you know, the idea that we were doing is like, we'll talk about some symptoms here, and then we'll build on this booklet and do like bigger, more developed treatments, you know, based on, if you look at the symptoms, and then you can go through and do like kind of combinations of like what we're talking about. And so we're going to do part 2 of this class as a free class, you know, coming up in the next month or two. and build it up to where it's more like treatment oriented and still even more single kind of treatment symptom things. So this is only a small portion of my notes, and so we could talk about this 3 or 4 weekends in a row and probably not cover everything.
Well, I have something we can add to your notes, or it's
Okay.
probably in there. So I have a really interesting joint issue.
Okay.
So my right hand, the left finger, the fourth finger, right hand, fourth finger. When I sleep at night, I usually kind of curl my hands and the joint locks. So I've been doing
Like
a lot.
this? Like that?
All right, yeah. And then I have to move it. And then during the day, it comes back. I've been doing a lot of gardening.
Yeah.
So I've been using the hand more, and I've been having some, I don't know if it's arthritis in the back of the hand, but now the joint is locking.
It's actually called trigger finger, and it's crystalline deposits on the tendon. And so use something like, you have choices. You can use the blend Arthrocare, or you can use Eucalyptus citrodora. You know, citrodora, like the other eucalyptuses won't work as well. So Eucalyptus citrodora or lovage, and rub it, like, even though it's in the hand, you can rub it on the hand and the finger and everything. But the issue is actually up on the forearm. And so put a bunch of the oil, I'd actually even do it neat, and then kind of rub it in, and then really kind of rub and massage the forearm, and then follow the palm down. And then you can rub the fingers, but it's actually, by the time it hits here, it's because of a chain reaction from the forearm. So you really want to unwind the crystalline deposits in the forearm itself, so that it allows that finger to move in the tendon and sheath. And so the issue is actually a forearm issue.
And I have
even, doctors could give you injections for that, and it's actually, the injection is up on the forearm, not in the hand.
Okay. I have Arthrocare, so I could work with that.
Several drops of Arthrocare, and just do it daily, because you have like pieces of like they're just crystalline deposits, pieces of like uric acid, just debris that ends up in the tendon and sheath there, and it just will start to lock that up.
What do you mean by neat massage? I mean,
neat being like, don't even bother putting it in a carrier oil or alcohol. Just put the drops on directly, and then kind of rub it in, and then just kind of take your thumb and just move in on the tendons. Like if you go like this, and just like stick your thumb in, and then you're not really, like, if you look, you're not really like sliding it. Like at first you're making contact, and then you're moving as much as you can without sliding on the skin. And then you move, and then you do it again. And then you move, and then you do it again.
Right.
So you'll kind of keep doing that up and down the forearm. And then once you've done that, then you do it where you move it, like where you kind of go like this.
Okay.
If you do that a lot of times in a couple of treatments, I mean, there's times where you have to treat it for months, but it depends on how much has been deposited there. But a lot of times you'll start finding relief within a treatment or two.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
I can easily do that. Okay.
You're a little bit predisposed to it, so you might need to tune it up from time to time. And eventually you might want to do things that support kidney function. So parsley, celery, lovage internally, any of those internally, sandalwood internally. I usually tend to go for lovage or parsley. And for that, like lovage leaf is cheaper than lovage root and works probably as good. So you can look at it from that point of view.
Okay. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Greg, this is Laura.
Hey, Laura.
And I'm kind of interrupting, but did some of what you just say also apply to Dupuytren's?
Remind me of what that is. Like that sounds familiar, but I can't place it right now.
Dupuytren's, it's what I just had to have hand surgery, but it curls my my fingers, but I have it in both hands and in my feet to some degree.
I think that's more neurological.
It's around it does some binding around the tendons. Don't worry about it. If you're not familiar,
let me
I
look
just was
that up.
curious.
Because let me look that up. I do remember looking that up for you one time, but it's a little bit different. Where this one's just deposits on the joint, that, if I remember right, has a bit of a neurological component.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Go ahead, Zakia.
Hey, Zakia.
Looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. I'm not sure why.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's amazing. My next question I had forgotten was also about trigger finger. But mine is sort of a compound question, because I know in traditional Chinese medicine, when you look at the 5 elements, they apply them to certain fingers. And on my left hand, the first pointer finger supposedly is connected to the liver. So in the past month or two, just that one finger and I'm associating it with the liver. So my question is, well, you've answered it with the previous question, how to treat the liver finger and the trigger finger. But you have a blend called trigger point. Is that applicable to the trigger finger?
So your first finger is doing that?
Yes. And it's weird because it's really
that's really
when I wake
uncommon.
up, but during the course of the day, it dissipates.
I would still do what I just described.
Yes.
Traditionally, the trigger finger is the ring finger, but it still can happen in other fingers. And so again, it goes back to crystalline deposits. It's a bit of a spasm, but it's because the deposits get caught on the tendon and sheath as they move. And so you would do the same thing. You would just, instead of when you're treating the ring finger, you're treating more on the outside of the forearm.
Right.
That finger, you're treating more in here. You're still treating the forearm, but you're just following a little bit more medial.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so is it valid to associate it with the liver? Because I was thinking that maybe it was.
I would treat it. I would treat it as, it might be impacting liver function, but it's not. I wouldn't think that liver function is causing it. I would say it's almost like flip it, where that issue is causing some potential liver issue, but the issue, the crystalline deposits are actually a byproduct of kidney function. And it's just deposits that they're all over, but here it's actually locking up the joint. Right.
And I guess an additional support would be to take some kidney herbs, like a little juniper berry or something. Or you basically said parsley.
That would help prevent it in the future, but it probably wouldn't undo the finger.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the finger, you have to get in and manually actually work it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we had some questions early on about the digestive
stuff
too.
By the way.
Kind of may have answered some of these.
Yeah.
Could you talk about leaky gut?
Oh yeah, that one's a bit more involved. Leaky gut. Usually with leaky gut, I start with German chamomile or yarrow, and then go on and off. Let me look that up in my notes, because that one's a bit more of an involved treatment, and I don't mind talking about it, but I also don't want to just talk about it just off the top of my head. Let me look up my notes, and we can talk about it in detail. So we'll do that maybe right after the break. Yeah.
Is there an easy to help with Crohn's?
No, there's, I mean, again, that's another one that is an involved treatment. And so I can look on my notes and we can go into that a little bit, but yeah. I mean, those are very involved, both of those. And it's usually multiple facets. It's not just like this oil does that. Like you're having to do like layers and rotational therapies and things like that. So.
Any suggestion for loose bowel movements, not due to sickness, body is just not digesting well?
Yeah, so you could start with trying a couple of things. One is applying absinthium or wormwood to the gut, like applying it topically, right? Two is you could use a little bit of charcoal for that. I don't like it for long-term use, but like if you're just having it from time to time, you could use it to treat that. Now you cannot take wormwood or absinthium essential oil internally, but you can get wormwood capsules. Like if you just go to Amazon and punch in wormwood capsules, you can get wormwood capsules and take that internally. And between the topical and the internal, that usually knocks that out. The other one that you wouldn't really think of for something like that is if it's potentially because of like a parasite or something like that, clove oil will knock that out. If it's just like poor function or poor muscular movement in the gut, cinnamon oil would work. Again, you're putting it in water and drinking it. Same with the clove oil, you would put it in water and drink it. Every once in a while, I've used galbanum to treat that, but galbanum is way down the list as far as things to do. Usually right off the bat, I do absinthium topically and have somebody take wormwood capsules internally, like 2 or 3 capsules. And again, you're not using the essential oil, you're using herb that you get from the health food store. And the reason is like the wormwood or absinthium essential oil is so potent. It has really high thuyon content, and it's not good to take internally. But the capsules don't have the thuyon that the essential oils do. And, it has it on a very small amount. And so great way to treat. So that usually will knock it out, Occasionally it doesn't work. So if we set all of that aside, there's one other thing to look at here, is that sometimes the loose bowel movement can be because of poor vagal tone, right? So you would see poor vagal tone, which is the vagus nerve. You would see a little bit of respiratory issue, a little bit, and it could just be respiratory weakness or erratic breath, something like that. Usually high levels of stress, some digestive upset, some nausea, a little bit of maybe not vomiting, but like sometimes feeling like you might need to vomit, or occasional diarrhea. And the thing that basically it kind of is pulling you out of fight flight and toning the vagus nerve is marjoram. Marjoram, nothing works better than marjoram for this. And this you could take internally, but you can also inhale and just put a bunch of drops on your gut, like neat, just like 6-8 drops, and just rub it in. You could even put it on your back, and that will actually pull your body out of the fight flight and tone up the vagus nerve, and actually would reduce the loose bowel movement and the diarrhea. And so you could start with either the wormwood approach, or you could start with the marjoram approach. And then if neither one of those works, then I'd probably go to like something like cinnamon, just to improve the movement of the digestive tract.
Aside from hyssop, is it recommended that these oils are ingested to best treat digestive issues?
Yeah, except for like maybe wormwood or absinthium. For digestive stuff, a lot of it is going to be ingested. Yeah.
Could you talk about precautions for taking essential oils internally? Are there contraindications? I've been taught by other teachers that it is not advised to take essential oils internally unless you've been supervised by someone who is knowledgeable.
Yeah, there's a couple different schools of thought. One school of thought is don't take essential oils internally at all. And that was mostly because on the US market, there wasn't a lot of genuine oils. And then like where I was taught, we took almost everything internally, like it was the complete opposite. And so the rule of thumb is if you're not sure, don't take it internal, use it topical or through inhalation. There's things that you definitely don't want to take internal. Things like wormwood, artemisia, rue, like hyssop. If you're pregnant, never take anything internal. If you're again, if you're not sure, don't take it internal. But when you start to do like a casual dosage where you're doing 1 or 2 drops, that's a small enough dosage where it's pretty okay. When you start doing bigger dosages, that's when you really need to be under somebody's supervision. And so I would say keep it under like 2 drops, like maybe 3 drops or less for going through and treating this, and you should be okay. Usually 1 or 2 drops is pretty solid. And then if in doubt, again, just inhale or apply topically. I would always put it in water or put it in something, like in with like a capsule with olive oil or coconut oil, sesame oil, something like that. And then piece of bread, piece of sugar, something like that. So do it that way. But yeah, in the booklet, in the front, there is a section about taking things internal, and there's a list of oils for casual dosages, which is 1 to 2 drops. My rule of thumb would be if you don't see it listed there, or if I haven't said like, this would be okay to take, that's a good starting point. I would use that as an indicator or like a guide. And if you don't see it there, maybe don't do it unless, we've talked about it. It's at the very front of this booklet. If you flip through it, it says like internal, let's see where it's at.
Page 2 and 3, Greg.
Yeah, page 2 and 3. And there's a list of probably 25 things to take internal. And it says why to take them.
Can you use Digestive Calm internally and topically?
I would just use it actually topically. It was meant for a topical treatment. Topical or inhalation. Yeah.
The 3 wise men, can you say again how it helps the liver?
It stimulates liver secretions, especially when it comes to like endocrine function, like hormonal function. Like the use of frankincense and myrrh stimulates all like endocrine secretions. It jumpstarts the flow of secretions from the glands. And so the liver has some endocrine function to it. The kidney has some endocrine function to it. And so it just helps with all of that. Not so much liver function itself, but liver secretions.
I had a gastric sleeve a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it's hard for me to absorb nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a good oil to use?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about that one. I know there's an answer. I just, off the top of my head, I'm going to have to look that one up. But I mean, because you have like a structural issue. Let me think about that. Let me think about that and look something up. But I'll come up with an answer before the end of the day.
For the pulmonary stress blend, I wrote how just inhalation and application around sinus areas. Someone's asking also on the back. They're asking, would you also apply?
Yeah, you could apply it to the back, to the chest, to the abdomen. Yeah, you could apply it like that. But it was meant for inhalation, but topically it does still take stress out of the respiratory tract. Even though it's not being inhaled, it still has an impact on the respiratory tract.
In a recent class, Greg said he would talk about certain stretches to go through with the breathing, and he has recommended.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that today. Yeah.
All right, that was a great Q&A.
Okay, so how about this? We'll take a little.
Melinda, sorry.
Yeah.
Saw your
Hey,
hand
Melinda.
raised.
Hi, Greg. I
Hey,
have
hey.
a question about night terrors. Is there a protocol that would help that? There is someone that was diagnosed when they were young. They stopped for a while.
What was it? Night
terrors. Night terrors. The person has recently been diagnosed as bipolar and is on medication, but is still having the night terrors.
How old are they?
That I'm not sure. I'm asking on behalf of someone else who
Yeah,
knows.
are they an adult or are they child or?
They're an
teenager?
adult.
Okay.
I just don't know what age bracket.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. So they're bipolar. Yeah, I mean, usually what I use to treat that is Melissa. Melissa is a little bit pricey, but you could probably get away with it. Instead of using the essential oil, we make a spray that has Melissa in it, and it's a fraction of the cost. And what they could do is, like, as they go to bed, like, spray down the front side, spray down the back side, and I would spray it a little bit on the bed and the pillow, and then do that, and that should help quite a bit.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's like 25% the cost of the essential oil. Like, it's significantly less.
Fabulous, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back at 11:30 Central Time, so 15 minutes, and we'll actually target the endocrine system. We'll start talking about endocrine function. So. Hey, everybody, let's go ahead and come on back. So we're going to start the endocrine issue. We might have to pick this up again after lunch, but let's at least get the ball rolling. So endocrine function has to do with your glands and all the byproducts of the glands, all the secretions of the glands. And the endocrine system is one of 3 systems in your body that has a memory. One being your immune system, one being your nervous system, and one being the endocrine system, which means whatever we're exposed to, whatever experiences we have an imprint on this particular system and affects how it functions, right? And so with that, your immune system communicates very, very quickly. Your nervous system communicates very quickly. Something happens, it has an experience, it shoots up pieces of information up to the brain. It comes back down the brain and the spinal cord, and you take some sort of action. So communication in the nervous system, very, very quick. Communication in the endocrine system, very, very slow. Slow to respond to things in the environment, and then slow to break the pattern. So once it gets started, it takes a little while, but like when you want it to stop or you need to break a pattern, it's slow to do that as well. And the issue with the endocrine system is there's so much communication between the different glands and the different hormones and things that have been released that sometimes just treating a single aspect of it sometimes isn't enough. Sometimes you have to look at treating the whole system as a whole, and then breaking patterns within particular glands themselves. Now, the other thing that you want to keep in mind for the endocrine system is it does impact a lot of your physiology, but more importantly, it affects your mental processes. A lot of what we call the lower mind, which is another way of saying the sensory mind or your normal everyday mind, is endocrine function, the endocrine system functioning through the brain or through the nervous system. And how it communicates is tied to the hypothalamus, but basically your nervous system and endocrine system are communicating with each other, and this makes up for a lot of our lower mental activity. Not so much the intuitive mind, but the normal everyday mind, some of your cognitive processes. And so if, like, say you're in fight flight, it affects how you think. Like it affects how you think, how you process information, how you go process information, or how you don't go into depth about processing something because you're in fight flight, right? So that's just an example. And it's always hard to kind of pinpoint like, oh, this process is tied to thyroid function. This process is tied to the pancreas. But you just kind of go through and start regulating different functions of the endocrine system. And then from there, it starts to change your thought processes, your ways of thinking. So, okay. Adrenal stimulants for anxiety, stress-related conditions, examples. And so sometimes what happens with the adrenals is that it says stimulants, but it doesn't mean to like stimulate you into fight flight, but it's just stimulating healthy function. Anytime you see in medical aromatherapy or herbal remedies, stimulant, it's stimulating body processes, not stimulating like taking a bunch of caffeine, right? It's stimulating processes in the body. And so basil is very good, borneol, yeah, see, that's my old notes. Borneol is camphor, by the way. Sorry, I will change that. Or maybe can we let Letty know, and Letty will change that. It's a very specific type of camphor, and it's a snooty form of camphor. Let's just say it's very old school. Some of these notes are 30 years old. Geranium, pine, rosemary and sage, really super good as far as tonics, or excuse me, stimulants for adrenal function. But then when we switch over for tonics, so this is just something that's very toning, but not necessarily stimulating the process. So like when something's been depleted over a period of time, or you just feel like it needs some work to prevent any potential issues for the future. One of the things is like when you've been pushing really hard and the body is tired, you start to run on low-grade adrenaline that eventually will deplete the adrenals. And so this would be a time to use adrenal tonics. Black spruce and Sylvester pine are really super good for that. You can see the camphor, the sage, the rosemary, they're also tied to this as well. So they do more than just the stimulation, they also do the toning part. The thing that's interesting about black spruce and Sylvester pine is they also mimic certain hormones. And so one of the things that Sylvester Pine does is it kind of stimulates the process of cortisone and mimics cortisone in the body. And cortisone being an anti-inflammatory component. So if you have like achy joints, arthritis, things that aren't getting well and need an anti-inflammatory component to it, several drops of Sylvester Pine just on the wrist, like this, and it will take some of the achiness and some of the general soreness out of the body. Not so much for sharp pain, it's more for like that dull, achy pain. We are going to do a big talk on pain, by the way. So pain syndromes, we are going to go quite in depth about. And so lack of a period or heavy flow, you have a lot of choices here. All of them work pretty well, but the two go-to ones that I'll say three. Vitex is kind of my number one go-to thing for either light menstruation or super heavy menstruation, heavy flow, or irregular flow. Also, clary sage can be very helpful in this area, and Bible leaf. One that gets used somewhat can be mugwort, but I find Vitex to be more consistent. And the way to use the Vitex is you can put a couple drops on your wrist, but a lot of times what I have people do is a couple drops on the finger and then rub it into the temple. You can take it internal, but it's one of those ones where it works just as well applied topically. So there's not a real big need to take it internally. And yeah, I would call that good. Vitex works good for PMS. It works good for pre-menopause. It works good for menopause. Like anything to do with the menstrual cycle, you could go to Vitex and it would help to actually regulate that. It does have some hormone mimicking components to it, and it just basically helps to balance and regulate. So it doesn't cause any excess. It's always just kind of a balancer and a regulator. If there is menstrual cramps, a lot of times I have people use either marjoram or tarragon, several drops in their palm with a little bit of like lotion or massage oil, and then rub it like right above like the lower abdomen, right about the belt line, right? You know, if you put marjoram even neat in the area, marjoram takes cramps out of something very, very quickly. And so it's a way to ease that. Easing the birthing process, neroli works pretty good. But clary sage works amazing. We actually just used this. It wasn't one of my patients or clients, but there was a practitioner that had somebody who was giving birth about a week 10 days ago. And we used clary sage. We used a lot of clary sage. And put it in a massage oil and just had them rub it on the abdomen and the low back and all that. And the birthing process was very quick. And the mom said the baby just popped out. And I think it wasn't her first baby. I think it was her second baby. So yeah, so she did have something to compare it to. A lot of times the first baby is harder, but anyway. Very good for that. Inhalation might work, but it really needs to be more topical. Diabetes. Now, this isn't necessarily like a cure for diabetes. It's helpful. A lot of times with this, you can reduce the amount of insulin that a person is needing, but it doesn't make it completely go away. Unless it's just like really mild, or it's like pre-diabetic condition, or they just have like a slight form of diabetes. So cinnamon can be helpful. eucalyptus, geranium, juniper, but one that you wouldn't really think about here, it's Melissa. And Melissa actually helps to re-educate the like receptor sites. And I have seen this actually lower the blood sugar, and not massively, but 15, 20 points, 30 points sometimes. And so if a person is having no blood sugar issue and you take Melissa, I've done a couple of tests with that and it doesn't lower the blood sugar. So it's not like it's like insulin where it's just going to drop the blood sugar levels. It's more about re-educating the receptor sites. And so basically it makes your body use insulin more efficiently. I'd say the same with fenugreek. Fenugreek, I don't think we have fenugreek on the site. I have it, but we have several things that aren't on the site. It's not expensive. If you need it, email us. We can pop it on the site. But, there's lots of things that you guys might not use, but I use it for blends and for specific treatments. And so fenugreek and Melissa, I do have a blend for blood sugar, but I don't put it on the site just because I don't want people to think that it's going to be a replacement for their insulin. And so I usually just do it with email versus, I think you guys are solid, but we do also have people who just pop on the site that maybe have never done a class or something. And I just don't want them to have the wrong idea. And so sometimes I wait till I have interaction with people or give it to them directly rather than just ordering something from the site. Fatigue can be, any number of things, but, the body's just tired, it's fatigued, it's worn down, the adrenals are fatigued, the whole endocrine system can be off. Time can be very helpful over a period of time, but if you need to really have the body bounce back very quickly, cinnamon or cassia. And all of these would be either a few drops internally or inhalation. If somebody is very fatigued, you could give them a few drops internally and then put it in a diffuser in the room. Cinnamon and cassia, you can put it on the skin, but you really want to dilute it down in some massage oil or like lotion or something. I tend not to put a lot of that directly on the skin unless it's already mixed in an ointment or something. But inhalation, it works really super well. Internal works super well. Female tonic, again, going to Vitex. Bible leaf is good. Anise is good because it's balancing to the involuntary part of the nervous system. And so, even though we're talking about the endocrine system, it's still being impacted by the nervous system and it's still being impacted by the immune system. And so in this particular component, female tonic can also be a little bit of sex drive and arousal during intimacy. Anise can be actually probably a little bit more helpful than the Vitex and things like that. And so, again, just general female reproductive system. You have the oils listed. Fight, flight. This could be in the nervous system and this could be in the endocrine system. So I included them both. Here you have marjoram, lemongrass, tuberose, and the blend quietude. Marjoram is really good. Sometimes we're in long-term fight, flight. Lemongrass does kind of regulate the sympathetic nervous system. And marjoram helps to tone the parasympathetic, so it pulls you out of the fight, flight and is toning to the rest and repair component. So marjoram is very good for, sleep and and pulling your body out of the fight flight mode. Glandular stimulants, that's like what we were talking about with the liver. This is just to jumpstart all the glandular secretions. Sometimes our endocrine system is sluggish. It's not functioning like it should. Just like for the gut, the ANS support helps with the nerve innervation for the gut and helps the gut to function better. The glandular stimulants, the frankincense and myrrh, the blend would be 3 Wiseman to use in this. Super, super good for jumpstarting the glands. Impotence. You have several choices here. Pepper can be good, cardamom can be good. Damiana is probably one of the ones that's really a standout here, especially for males, because it allows the testosterone to remain in the body for a longer period of time before it gets converted. So Damiana can be very good for that. Damiana is traditionally thought of as being like a sexual tonic, and then both for men and women. But Moroccan thyme is also very supportive of, especially for males. Moroccan thyme can be, and it's not like a stimulant, it's just like kind of strengthening over a period of time. Lang Lang can be very helpful for both men and women, and for increasing sex drive and all that. Lang Lang combined with cinnamon is actually quite the good combination. Insufficient milk, male tonics. Again, you see the Damiana and the Moroccan thyme. And again, one that you wouldn't think of for this is the bergamot mint. Can be very stimulating to that. Metabolism. So you have different oils here that are very good for stimulating or jump-starting metabolism. You can do this with inhalation, but several of them would probably need to be taken internally. The one that I would not take internally would be sage, but other than that, everything else goes. Melissa is actually quite good for this. Oregano is quite good. Lavender can be good. Rosemary, sage, if you're going to use sage, inhale and on the wrist. If you do want to take sage internally, use Spanish sage. Use the Spanish sage. Don't do regular sage or clary sage internal, just the Spanish sage. So usually my rule of thumb is don't use sage internal. Pancreas stimulant. So this can be about helping to regulate blood sugar a little bit, but not so much. It's more like digestive enzymes, processing food, things like that. Again, bergamot mint and neroli, just jump-starting the pancreas. Sometimes you'll have inflammation that's in the pancreas, and the pancreas will get very, very sluggish. One of the things that I look at for that is like if there's a lot of fatigue after you've eaten, I would go to a pancreas stimulant. A weak pancreas is cypress. A weak depleted pancreas, cypress works really super well for that. Yeah, that's usually something that's been inflamed for a long period of time. Again, pancreas doesn't always mean blood sugar, so it could be other functions. And so the pancreas stimulant and weak pancreas don't necessarily impact blood sugar, but they impact some of the other functions of the pancreas. Pituitary function, both the pituitary and the hypothalamus kind of regulate all the other glands. And you could say either one of them could be considered like the master gland. They do a lot of things together. There's these like axis of which like 3 glands work together: the pituitary, the hypothalamus, and then the thyroid is one, and then the pituitary, hypothalamus, and adrenals is another, and then the pituitary, hypothalamus, and the gonads, the sex glands. function together. And so the pituitary being a big component of that. Hypothalamus is impacted a lot by frankincense and myrrh. The pituitary, because of the hormone mimicking components, black spruce, Sylvester pine are really super good. Vitex actually does it both for men and women, but I tend to use it more for women. And one that's a super sleeper, but super good for the pituitary is Neoli. Neoli is really revitalizing to the body, can help with depleted body, depleted endocrine system, but especially if the pituitary is depleted or not functioning properly, it can be the thing that jumpstarts it and gets it going. Neoli is underutilized, I think, sometimes. And so postpartum depression, neroli does work, but jasmine's my kind of go-to thing for this. The other thing that jasmine's really nice for is stimulating confidence in a person. But postpartum depression is basically a kind of depletion. And, you know, you don't think of jasmine as being super fortifying, but jasmine is super fortifying to the body, both men and women, but especially women, especially women. I like to use jasmine just because it's strengthening without stimulating, and it tends to make you a little bit less serious. Like, you know, it's like, I don't want to say playful, but it makes you a little bit more lighthearted, right? And so the tendency, like if you're working a lot or you get fatigued, you get burned out, or, you know, here postpartum depression, you're dealing with a crying baby all the time, it would be real easy to get super serious about the whole situation and like the dynamics of what's going on maybe in the household with the new baby and everything. And so the jasmine helps you kind of go with the flow of things, but it's also very fortifying to the body. Very, very fortifying. Premenstrual syndrome. Usually this is a combination of things, you know, because there can be a lot of cramping, there can be some fluid retention. The cramping, I use the marjoram. The fluid retention, I actually use fennel for that. You can use other things, but fennel seems to work really well for the issue of a little bit of bloating and fluid retention associated with the menstrual cycle. And mugwort can be applied to the lower abdomen, but boy, Vitex is super good for this. Sexually overexcited, you know, that can happen for a few reasons, but you know, this can also happen because of like meditation, spiritual practice, Kundalini syndrome, you know, things like this. If you're in the middle of a spiritual practice, and actually one that didn't make it into the notes here would be Spanish marjoram, not regular marjoram, but Spanish marjoram or myrrh. Yeah. And then the thymus, which has to do with, you know, fighting off viruses and stimulating the immune system, things like that. Thyme is really good. Now, if you have an autoimmune issue, then the use of Moroccan thyme would be more appropriate. And then tonics for the endocrine system, the endocrine function, would be lemon verbena is good by itself. You can, several drops on the wrist, take a few drops, take it internally, or lavender complex. And again, several drops on the wrist. You know, you don't even have to take it internal. Lavender complex is, you know, obviously lavender based, but it's a bunch of different essential oils that help to balance out the overall endocrine system. And so with that, let's go ahead and do a little Q&A that's associated with endocrine function. Did I not have thyroid in here? Thyroid. For some reason, I didn't have the thyroid in here. Lenny, can we add thyroid to this? For the thyroid function, I don't know what happened.
You have it in letter D.
What's that?
You have it in letter D.
Oh, I have it in D. Okay. Oh, I see. I see.
Were they supposed to be together?
No.
Sorry, I thought it was a different section.
So it would be thyroid imbalance and thyroid tonic would be 24 and 25.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't communicate that very well. So thyroid imbalance would be clove, like if it's either too high or too low, so hyper or hypothyroid issues would be clove. You could maybe do it with inhalation, but a few drops in water and take it internally would be the go-to thing. And then just a thyroid tonic, black spruce or Sylvester pine, again, applied to the wrists, like several drops, like 4 or 5 drops, rub your wrists together, boom, all good. So, yeah, so let's go ahead and deal with Q&A with endocrine issues. Fire away.
Go ahead, Cindy, then Al.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey, you said jasmine was fortifying and it helps with confidence and a light heart.
Yes, yes.
So in one of your classes, we used jasmine ointment.
Yeah.
So and the instructions was to use it on your feet for that class, but how would you use it besides that?
You could still just use it for the feet. You could apply it to the solar plexus and the heart area, but you could use it for on the feet as well. Yeah.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Yeah, like kind of the jasmine, as long as you get it on the body, it kind of doesn't matter. And you have 3 kind of contact points where if you get it on, it kind of hits and affects the whole body. One is the wrist, when you do the wrist and you go like this. One is the temples, and one is the top of the foot. And the reason being that those 3 areas don't have a lot of fatty tissue for the oil to have to work through to get to the bloodstream. And so all 3 of those spots, if you put something on there, boom, it hits and affects the whole body very quickly. The other one would be just inhalation and getting it into the lungs and letting it circulate that way. So as long as you do one of those, you're pretty solid.
So does the inhaling the ointment do the same?
Sure. Yeah. You can inhale the ointment and, just putting it on your feet, you're going to have the oil come up and kind of linger, and you're going to be inhaling it anyway. And so, but you could still open up the bottle and just inhale it directly out of the bottle.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Danelle, then Robert.
Hey, Danelle.
Greg, I had a question about maybe if you're going to cover it later, it's okay too. It's about sort of postmenopausal sort of, mood issues, specifically like depression and anxiety. I don't know if that's something you're going to cover or if
you would actually still kind of treat that with Vitex, and sometimes I use jasmine with that. And if the jasmine doesn't work, sometimes I switch over to the anise.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's one I should add to the notes is postmenopausal. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
I mean, here's a couple other things that I've kind of visited, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. One is African bluegrass. That's a little bit more like if like the moods are like fluctuating a bunch, but there tends to be a little bit more of a mood issue that just like the person feels cranky a lot. That can be helpful, but a lot of times the Vitex actually regulates a lot of that. And so, because it's just the hormones that are causing then like this chain reaction. And so I still keep them on Vitex, but then I'll augment it with like first jasmine, and then if that doesn't work, I'll use the African bluegrass. And the other one is sometimes I'll use St. John's wort, And that's just to flush out emotions. And I tend to use that if there is like, if they're having conflict with people around them, like, you know, like they're postmenopausal, but they also are dealing with a jerk at work, or, you know, they're having conflict with their spouse or something. And it just helps to flush out some of the emotional component. The issue with the St. John's wort is that if they're on a lot of medications, it will flush out some of the medications as well.
Yeah, I've read that. Okay.
Yeah, and so like I always kind of hesitate with that one. And the other one that you could use is that blend Gilead. The Gilead is for basically flushing out lower emotions and calming down the lower emotional response. And so that can be very helpful. Another one that's a little bit of a sleeper with that can be saffron. And saffron taken a little bit, like what I do is I put like a drop on my hand and then just kind of like lick it. And the saffron can, it's stronger than the African bluegrass for like moods. It stimulates the intuitive side of the mind, but it also helps with like serotonin and things like that. And just like, it puts you like in like a happy camper mode, you know, if that makes sense. And so it's a little bit pricey. But the issue with the saffron is like you really only want to do like one drop, because if you start using bigger dosages of it, it actually will reduce the amount that you urinate.
Okay.
And so like, you know, it would have to be 3 or 4 drops, but like, you know, as soon as you stop taking it, like it regulates it. But I've actually used it to treat frequent urination issues, and it can be helpful for that. It's not like a complete fix or complete cure, but it does calm it down just because of how it relaxes that smooth muscle down there. But it's not my first go-to thing. It does work really well, but I usually try to do it in ways, you know, saffron's a bit expensive. So like sometimes I try to do it in ways that are cost effective so that people can use it a bunch and try to regulate it. But if there's a chronic problem, I usually end up going to the saffron.
With the St. John's wort and Vitex, I mean, do you recommend doing the essential oils, or because I know you can buy supplements too? Or both?
So the Vitex, you can get Vitex in the health food store. You would have to take a much larger dosage, and sometimes I find that just the herb itself isn't always effective. Like the essential oil, because it's so potent. The St. John's wort, you could probably get away with taking it with just the herbal capsules.
Capsules.
Capsules. I mean, I guess you could do a tincture too. I just always hesitate with tinctures because people make different potencies, and there's a couple companies that don't make very potent tinctures. And so usually they're not in the health food store. That's something you'd buy online, like the Herb Farm, you know, that one kind of orangish label. They're pretty solid. Gaia is pretty solid. You know, Gaia actually uses CO2 extraction, so kind of in the realm of essential oils. And so I'm pretty sure they make a St. John's wort.
Vitex would be just a couple drops internally every day?
You don't even need to do internal. Actually, you can get away with 1 drop. You can do a couple, but like put it on your finger and then rub them together and then rub it in the temple.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't even have to take. I mean, you can take it internal, but you don't need to. Yeah, like it works topical or internal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Robert, then Laura.
Hey, Robert.
Good morning or afternoon, I don't know. So I had been under the impression that cholesterol issues were endocrine issues.
Yeah, sometimes I put them in different places just because the way people would look them up. So
Okay.
you could do cholesterol here, and again, rosemary, verbena, and cypress would be the two go-to things.
And is that for lowering LDL or raising HDL?
It's both, but raising the HDL, I usually have them use like good fatty foods, like avocado is kind of a good go-to thing for that.
Okay.
You know, just eating an avocado, you know, or half an avocado a day or something.
Okay. And then the second question on diabetes. Are the oils internal or inhalation?
Yeah. No, they would need to be internal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
The one that I got the best results with was Melissa, actually. You
Okay.
know, again, it doesn't make it go away, but if they're on the cusp, like if they're, you know, like pre-diabetic, you know, you can really kind of keep them off the insulin. Or if they're just barely diabetic, you can maybe get them off insulin. You know, they're at that point, they're probably regulating or checking their blood sugar. But like if they're full-blown diabetic, it a lot of times allows them to be a little bit more chaotic with their food intake, you know, like, you know, taking in carbs or something, and doesn't shoot the blood sugar up as high and may reduce the amount of insulin you take, but it doesn't make it like go away.
Well, in my specific case, I'm a non-insulin dependent diabetic. I'm taking metformin and Trulicity, and it seems to do a good job at bringing the blood sugar down to acceptable levels.
Oh,
but
nice.
I'd love to migrate off of that if possible.
Right.
Use something
that's
more
possible.
natural.
Like that Melissa and the fenugreek might be the two go-to things for that.
Okay, sounds good. I'll place an order for the fenugreek.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Laura, then Ralph.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Greg. I just missed something when you said not internal, you could rub it on the temple. Was that jasmine?
No, Vitex. Jasmine, actually, I wouldn't take that one internal. That one's just topical or inhalation, but Vitex, you could take it internal, but it works just as well topically. So if there's no reason to take it internal, I usually say, you know, just use it topical.
Okay, and then the second quick one was, and you probably said this, but I don't always get everything you say. Did you say, I was looking on the website, is it Jasmine Simbac or Jasmine Absolute you're talking about, or do either one of them work as well?
Either one of them work, and the Simbac is a little bit of a sweeter smell, and so usually that's the one that people usually end up getting. And so they both work equally as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph.
Hi, on the saffron, does saffron incense have the same overall effect as the saffron oil?
Saffron incense. Saffron incense would have more of a physicalizing effect on spiritual energy, but probably it might stimulate the intuitive mind a bit, but for the mood shifts and things like that, maybe not so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about jasmine incense? Would that still be fortifying for the body and mental go with the flow kind of thing?
For going with the flow, fortifying to the body, like I wouldn't use it to treat postpartum depression. I would apply the oil directly to the body. But if it was like self-confidence, going with the flow of things, just maybe mildly depleted, you might be able to get away with the incense, but definitely for going with the flow and confidence, the incense would work really well.
Okay.
Cool. Make sure it's real jasmine incense though. Like the thing with jasmine with incense and things, it's almost always synthetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there,
So
how would I?
Usually if it's cheap, it's because it's synthetic.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
using cinnamon when someone has a kapha body type, is this okay? Kapha, you know, in the Ayurveda as
yeah, I'm not super expert in the Ayurvedic stuff, so yeah, it would just be a guess on my part. Samantha, yes, Samantha knows more about Ayurvedic processes than I do. And she said it would probably be good, but I don't know enough to answer.
So looking at the booklet, all of these say sustained inhalation. Sometimes you're telling us to do it internally. I just want you to clarify for everyone why you're just putting sustained inhalation on.
Sustained inhalation is there in case somebody gets a hold of the booklet and they're not a student or whatever, so it keeps it safe. And so I'm telling you guys to do different things like in person, but that is geared up for, like, you know, people are going to end up with the booklet in their hand sometimes. And so if they do sustained inhalation, that's always a safe approach. You know, it always will work. It's just sometimes there's stronger versions of it, but sustained inhalation will always work. But there's stronger versions to do. So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think we're good with questions. So how about this? We'll take a break for lunch and we'll come back, and I think we're going to talk about muscular issues, a little bit of respiration, and some pain syndromes after lunch. So we'll take a break and we'll come back at 1:45.
Oh, just real quick, Bible leaf. It's not on the site. Is it an oil? Is it an herb?
It's an oil. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have it on the site. Okay, yeah, we'll get that one on the site. It's inexpensive too. It's very expensive.